We're up. Okay, so Shabbat Shalom again, and welcome. I think everyone knows John and Pam and Dave, and this is my good friend Daniel. Daniel, thanks for joining us today. Daniel's
My pleasure.
700, how many miles?
About 700.
And so Daniel's here with us today. Just had a little bit of time on way to another trip that he's taken, and we are pleased to have you with us today. So the rules are, Daniel, is everything I say, these people just confirm and clap and applaud. And so you're welcome to join in.
You kind of like
You just do 12 and 6.
Ahead,
That's
right
right.
ahead.
like
Of
remember
I don't know what show you've been watching.
Yeah. No, so it's today's topic. I was really excited about this particular class because the material is so ripe. It really is. I think in a lot of ways it can be delicate because I really am respectful of the way other people view things, and I just have certain opinions about things. And thanks to modern technology, I can voice those opinions. So the New Covenant. What are you guys' thoughts on the New Covenant? And we will try to keep up with the comments that come from our audience in internet land. Sometimes we do that well, sometimes not so much. But I'm anxious to hear some of the thoughts about the material, not so much about my presentation. But what do you think about this? First of all, did I make the point that within Jeremiah we have individual scrolls? I mean, you can talk about that or anything in particular.
One of the interesting things is that a lot of times in reading, people, I do it myself, and I get the sense that people do this when they read it, because when we talk about it or when I talk to other people, yes, Judah and Israel is talked about. Israel is talked about a lot. But in a lot of places in the scriptures, and in Jeremiah, all nations are referenced.
Mm-hmm.
Other countries are referenced.
Yep.
And people tend to just drop that off of there. It's all concentrated on that. So, like in Jeremiah today, one of the lines we read, and I can't remember the specific number of the line, but it was God was upset with Israel and with Judah and all nations.
Mm-hmm.
I got the feeling there that yes, he's upset with all mankind because they're not doing what he wanted, but he's particularly upset with Israel and Judah because they were tasked with bringing everybody to light.
Yeah, you have a job to do.
You have a job to do, and I'm mad at them too. But you were supposed to go fix them, not become part of the problem.
Yeah, some of the prophets would say, I put you in the middle of the world, like to be a light, and you behave worse than the nations did. So there is that, because you expect a great deal out of this person with whom you've emplaced great responsibility, to whom much is given, much is required. And so Israel has this task, and they will complete the task, And so I think that's what's so amazing about these particular prophets.
Well, that and the
so
good
forth.
news. And the good news is that God doesn't stay, the Creator doesn't stay mad forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Things have to be done. And everybody, it's like, I go rob a bank. I'm not worried about it. Ross will do my time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. It never works that way. Anywhere.
Yeah.
And so you're responsible for your actions. You're responsible for your offenses. Maybe not in this life, but certainly in accordance with God's laws. So the good news is that, hey, if you're willing to turn around
Mm-hmm.
and say, look, I'm sorry, and I'm not going to do that anymore, repent is what that comes down to, then I'm going to forgive you, and I'm not even going to remember it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's kind of pretty good in that, it's like we were never cast off into a black hole somewhere. God said, look, all you got to do is turn around. And you turn toward me, I'll turn toward you. You're sorry, I'll forgive you. and everything's fine.
I think.
Well, what's new about that?
Yeah.
It's pretty much always been
But
that way.
it seems to me like that all that seems to have gotten muddied up and not forgotten or not remembered or not talked about or.
Well, and just let me make this comment because I do have a lot of good, dear Christian friends, and so to be fair, thankfully I was raised by a God-fearing woman who taught me this basic principle from the time as early as I remember. When you do something wrong against God's way, you do go to God and you ask for forgiveness. And that's a valuable tool. And I don't think that Christians have missed that. I think they actually have that down. There is a sense in which some people, because primarily I think their teachers have led them astray, might not feel some ownership in their correction of behavior so much, though most Christians are very good, God-fearing people. I mean, they just are. So they're not like running around sinning. They've just they're kind of conditioned to say, I sin every day. But generally, it's, as my friend and teacher Johnny Powell said one time, it's hard for a righteous person to sin. You know, you meet these good people, and they're not running around sinning. I mean, they're, you know, now there are some things that I think they could remedy in their life, but I'm too worried about what I need to fix in me.
I didn't mean to affix anything to Christians.
No, I get it.
You know, there were a lot of Jewish people back in the day that was like, well, okay, so we'll take a goat down and have the rabbi kill it and all's forgiven. Well, that doesn't that didn't get you anywhere.
Yeah, big criticism is this outward show.
I think the prophets have all the time been against that show, if you want to use a street term. It's a show.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
you got to have the inside. Daniel, and you just have to jump in too.
Yeah.
Well, I want to change the subject entirely, so I'm letting this.
Okay.
Line
Well, you
down.
can't just you got to jump in and
have
change
to jump
the
in
subject.
because we won't
All
be
right.
quiet.
we like subject change.
Okay.
All right. raise your
So,
hand.
going to the beginning of your
I mean,
presentation,
All right.
you mentioned that Daniel was studying this scroll of Jeremiah.
Yeah.
And the scroll of Jeremiah that you're saying he was studying was small.
Yep.
Not the full book of Jeremiah that we have today, which
Right.
has obviously been edited to some degree.
Okay.
And my question is, Daniel was I'm speculating here. You can clarify if any of you
Okay.
know. Daniel's a teenager during the Babylonian destruction. We're talking armies show up, they destroy Jerusalem, they take the best of the best, they murder the rest, and they take them all to Babylon. And this young Hebrew, good-looking, smart, top-shelf citizen of Jerusalem is thrust into the king's care. It's the beginning of the book of Daniel. He starts being groomed into a temple court. A Babylonian court servant. That's what he's going to be doing, and then he burns through all of the years of his life.
Right.
So my question is, how did Daniel obtain, since there was no internet, there wasn't a postal service, there weren't couriers, to my knowledge, running back and forth between a burned out city, how did Daniel obtain a written copy of the scroll of Jeremiah, minimal, that you've described,
Right.
in the Babylonian court? He's there, he's with his family, he's being subjected to the infusion of Babylonian culture, he's learning to work in the king's court, and you're saying that at some point
He has these books.
he has, we call them books. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's a scroll.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, it's a little.
Yeah,
it's
not a
little roll.
codice. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How did he get one, and is there any evidence from anywhere besides inside your noggin that there was a mechanism for these expat Hebrews in Babylon to have access to scrolls? This is right after a serious war action,
Yeah.
a complete cultural cleanse. You're not even using. You got a new name now. You're a Babylonian citizen. You're gonna. Now he tried to do what he did, and he prayed in what
Right.
he did. how did he get this scroll? Because there weren't 30 of them, there weren't 100 of them, they weren't being published by Zondervan.
They weren't in every hotel room. Yeah,
That's correct. Also, wasn't like Babylon, weren't they like the heat of all civilization? They had libraries and so on.
See, that
they more than likely brought some of this stuff with them.
I'm thinking now. This is speculation,
yeah,
but
sure.
because what we get in Daniel 9:1 and following, basically, he says in verse 2, in the first year of the reign of Darius, he says, I considered in the books the number of years wherewith the word of Jehovah came to Jeremiah, and so forth. He's clearly studying Jeremiah.
Wait a minute, you just said something. If he's in Darius, this is after the Medes have taken over Babylon.
Yeah.
So he's no longer a teenager. He's now well into his adulthood. So decades have gone by.
Yeah, and the idea, so you're wondering, okay, when is this going to happen? So he's going back to the original prophecy because he wants, how's he going to determine what it is that he seeks? Well, he's going to go to the Word. And I have this idea, in fact, I think in this month's, the newest Biblical Archaeology Review, scholars are always trying to determine what was life like in Babylon. Was it really this oppressive, you have
right.
to, or
cosmopolitan and
yeah,
open,
it may have been
society.
open. In fact, we have from historical records, when think of Ezra and Nehemiah, and they're trying to get them, hey, come on, guys, let's go back and build the temple. And they're like, oh, come on, man, look at this place. Are you kidding me? Right. Look, I mean, we've got this. It's nice.
Ernest Martin, this is Dave Tyler. Ernest Martin claims that Daniel brought the scrolls with him. Now, I don't know who Ernest Martin is.
Yeah, he's a writer, and he's written quite a bit. The idea, I don't know how he got them. I don't know. But he's got them, and so the idea is that he's looking into this word, and so I think that it is important to recognize Daniel doesn't just have a vision where an angel comes and says to him, "Look, I'm going to explain to you the 70 years and how long what that is, and 70 weeks to determine." And he meets him where he's at. In other words, he's in these texts and he's saying, I just don't get it. But he's in the Word, so I think that's important.
So there's a supposition that, I'm echoing what you just said about Ernest Martin's alleged quote from the listener here. The idea is that I'm a Babylonian officer, and I've got 15 boys lined up against the wall. You guys are coming with us. You're going to be part of the court. And we're like, yes, sir, yes, sir. You got 15 minutes to get your stuff.
Yeah.
And he grabs a satchel with some clothes, and he grabs a satchel that's got 11 scrolls in there. Mm-hmm. And one of them might be this.
Yeah.
Maybe, or maybe the scribes, I mean, they didn't have Xerox machines, right?
Right.
So if you wanted to send dictation out anywhere, a scribe had to do it. So you've got this whole group of scribes that's in Jerusalem, and you just took over, and you're taking all the wealth of the city. Are you going to put the scribes to death? Or are you going to take them back with you and put them to work? They're the ones that do a lot of writing, and Baruch was one of those people that was a scribe. And I don't think anywhere in the text it says that, Babylon was upset with Jeremiah and killed him when they took over Jerusalem.
He was not killed by the Babylonians.
So, they probably thought, with his predictions that Babylon's going to win, they said, hey, this guy's on our side.
Tells them, go plant vineyards, Relax, get comfortable.
Sure, the letter.
So the idea, though, is there are a lot, and I love these kind of, how do we know? How did they? But we do know that it was there, at least according to the text. We get that he's studying these matters, and I think that it's important, to recognize. I don't know at what point scholars speculate. At what point did we get Jeremiah as we have Jeremiah? In other words, we have copies of sections of Jeremiah from Qumran that are a little bit different than the Masoretic text, and the order is not always in the right order. In fact, and you can look this up in Baba Batra 14b, it's in the Talmud, it lists, when it's listing the books of the canon, let's call it, in the Hebrew Scriptures, when it gets to the prophets, Jeremiah comes first. Interestingly enough, in our Bibles, in both the Christian Old Testament and the Jewish Tanakh, it's Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. In Baba Batra 14b, the order is Jeremiah, Isaiah, and Ezekiel. But by the time you get to, you can follow chronologically. If you go chronologically, Isaiah should be first, right?
Because he's the northern tribe.
That's right.
Focus.
And, well,
not exclusively.
But I understand the timing is such that it places it earlier, even if you do like the scholars do, and they say we have more than one Isaiah. So Isaiah, according to scholars, chapter 1 through 39, there are differences, variations of this theory. 1 through 39 is somewhat authentic Isaiah, like the guy. Yeshayahu ben Amos, the son of Amos. And then you have 40 through 66 is what they call Deutero-Isaiah. They can, most scholars say, look, I don't know who wrote this, but it isn't that Isaiah. Some will say, and you know this, we have a Trito Isaiah, third Isaiah. There's another Isaiah, bunch of Isaiahs. But I find, and I'm not, you know, a PhD in this, but I spend a lot of time reading this, and I find some very close connections linguistically, phrases that are repeated both in 1 through 39 as well as Deutero and Trito Isaiah. I don't see a reason necessarily to separate it. I think there is a clear mark, a distinction. Once you get to chapter 40, whoa, this is something new. Nachamu, nachamu ami, comfort ye, my people, says the Lord.
Another question.
Yep.
Hilkiah finds the scroll of Moses.
This is my favorite subject.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
Oh, this is like a volley.
Yeah, it's like soft
ready.
pitch, you know.
I'm ready.
So, you know, I mean, are you suggesting that this scroll is the scroll, the piece of parchment that the hands of Moses passed over?
I am. I am indeed.
Okay, and that would have been written in a Paleo-Hebrew.
Probably. And again, I'm not an
expert. Which might be a good reason to let's roll this up and hide it in the jar and leave it in the temple for, you know. And then years go by, and then Hilkiah's like going through the storage room, and he said, "Oh my god!
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!"
Right.
Now, how many chapters of the Torah are in this quote unquote scroll of Moses?
Oh, you'll have to wait for the book, but I will tell you this.
Volume 2 there, buddy.
I tell you, it appears that this scroll, most scholars, and when I say scholar, I mean both academically accredited, you know, with and also lay scholars, people who study this a lot. If you follow what happens in 2 Kings 22, in the time of Josiah, there is this working going on in the temple. They're cleaning it out. Remember, Josiah wants to restore and get things straight. So the temple's been in ruins. Like, think about the kings that came before Josiah. They're not interested in the religion of the ancient Israelites. They're like, you know, let's mothball that place. Let's tear it down and build an amusement park for the kids. Let's have popcorn, candy canes, and, you know, rides for the children. Let's not... It's gone into disuse. So when Josiah, it's going to go in the book.
Okay.
Josiah commissions this group to go through the temple. And let's get this thing back in operation. Well, when they're going through it, it says Hilkiah finds this book, and he gives it to Shaphan, and Shaphan's like, whoa, this is something. We got to show this to the king. So they bring it to the king, they read it to Josiah, and what does it say? It literally, he rends his garments because he realizes we've got a lot of work to do. Now, if you read the account in Kings and you read the account in Chronicles, there's a little bit of sleuthing required to determine did the discovery of the scroll cause the reform of Josiah or vice versa. I think it's vice versa. I think Josiah sets his heart to do what's right.
Maybe a year earlier.
Yeah, he's doing this reform in year 12 of his reign. He's 20 years old, for God's sake, 20. Jeremiah's also a young man. Jeremiah doesn't get called into the ministry until the 13th year of Josiah. So Josiah, 20 years old, he's already saying, get this paganism out of God's face. We're going to clean this place up. Get these Asherim, get these, let's get rid of this. And then God says, Jeremiah, I need your help. Calls Jeremiah. Jeremiah steps on the scene year 13. 5 years later, as if to shore up the support for what these two are doing, a king and a priest, he sends this, they find the scroll. And it says in 2 Kings 22 that the scroll that they find is the Torah of Moses. Now, question becomes, is that Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 through Deuteronomy 34:12? I don't think so. Again, it's...
For a lot of reasons.
For a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons. But one of those reasons is not to cast aspersions on the text or to make fun or anything like that. It's just a sleuthing. 22.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so whenever
I would tend to agree with you because, if Moses had written all of the rest, right, as you look at Deuteronomy, which is what Moses wrote, because it's like God
First
said
person.
to me, and he's talking about this is what I heard, this is what I saw.
Yeah,
in some parts of it. He was over there when this happened, and so it starts. So the position. But if he was writing this, Genesis would look different. It would be like, and God said to me.
Yeah,
it'd be more in the first person of a conversation, kind of like where Jeremiah is talking to Baruch.
Yeah. Now, the beauty of this is...
I'm sorry, forgive me.
Okay,
where's the verse?
2 Kings 22, let's start in verse 3. All right, so I'm going to read it. And it came to pass, 2 Kings 22:3, in the 18th year of King Josiah, you with me?
Yeah.
That the king sent Shaphan, the son of Azaliahu, the son of Meshullam, the scribe, to the house of Jehovah, saying... Go up to Hilkiah the high priest, that he may sum
Jeremiah's father, maybe.
I think. Sum up the silver which is brought into the house of Jehovah, which the keepers of the door have gathered the people, and let them deliver it into the hand of the doers of the work, that have the oversight of the house of Jehovah, and let them give it to the workers. Okay, now this is, he's tasking them to do this. Now, look at verse 8.
Yes.
Hilkiah the high priest said to Shaphan the scribe, scroll. I found a scroll in the where at in the temple in the house of Jehovah. I found the scroll, and look, he says I found it in the house of Jehovah, and Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it. And Shaphan the scribe came to the king and brought back word to the king, and he says, look, we've been dealing with all this, we've been cleaning out the temple. Oh, and by the way, verse 10.
Yes.
Shaphan the scribe told the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book, a scroll.
Okay.
And Shaphan read it before the king, and it came to pass when the king had heard the words of the book of the Torah. Notice how it says that. The book of the Torah. That he rent his clothes, and the king commanded Hilkiah the priest, and Ahikam the son of Shaphan, and Akbar the son of Micaiah, and So then they bring it to Huldah, and she gives this prophecy. So now what happens following that are some very concrete and specific things that Josiah then launches forward. Remember...
Ross.
Yeah.
It doesn't say the scroll written by Moses.
It doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I asked you that, and it sounded like you were going to take me to a verse that says that they found the scroll that Moses wrote.
Oh, I got you.
It doesn't say
specifically, right.
Specifically is kind of what
that's right.
Something either says or it isn't saying.
That's a good point. Fair enough.
I'm just saying it's not there.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so he finds the scroll of the Torah. Now, who writes the scroll of the Torah? All right. So what he does is when he hears the words of this book, he launches into this reformation, let's call it. And if you look at the things that he does, and you go back, what you'll find is that without exception, to my understanding, they don't deviate from the text of Deuteronomy. They're based on Deuteronomy. So we get this idea that that's what he finds. Now, there are a lot of reasons why I think that it's a version, if you will,
of Deuteronomy. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
It's right there, and that is, I get the impression from the context of these verses that you're talking about, in this scenario, that in Judah, at the temple, in the time of Josiah, or just prior to the time of Josiah, they're just not practicing,
right,
if I can call it this, the annual cycle of Judaism, all the feasts and feasts. They're not. I mean, the Torah is basically an instruction set for the people of Israel, all Israel, in the land of Israel. correct? That's what.
Yeah.
Centered on this house of Yehovah, and they're operating year round a cycle
Yeah.
of observing these feasts.
But where is that dictated to do that?
In the Torah. So my point is, you just
Yeah.
tell me it's just
Where
there's
in
just, it's just
Yeah.
not where.
Yeah, in Leviticus 23.
Well, it's
and,
also
you know,
in Exodus.
yeah.
I'm just saying. So it's almost like this scroll that's found, and this is my point. I'm not arguing with you. I'm saying
You can
this
argue with
scroll,
me.
Well, but I'm just saying I'm not
I understand.
contesting you. This scroll that they find and they look at, it's like for. Oh my gosh! I didn't know that. Like it's like you're supposed to brush your teeth every morning.
Right.
Rip my clothes. I'm supposed to brush my teeth every
Right.
morning.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying-
it brings to their attention
Well, my point
things
is, what
they're
were
not
they
doing.
doing? What were they doing the year before that? In 5 years before? Were they just having?
I'm thinking,
They just having like pig roasts? What are they doing?
Pretty
maybe
much.
so, maybe so.
Really?
It seems that they had forgotten where they came from, their past. They just
I
didn't.
can't believe that though.
Well, I
right
don't know.
there in Jerusalem, the temple's there. It might have a bunch of idolatry.
Well, see, that's kind of, this is, the scholar guys, and we're kind of like philosophers. We kind of think about, well, yeah, it's easy to have. I've seen friends that quit going to church a year or two later. They're just pagan as could be.
Well,
Right.
most of those
sure.
people couldn't read. I mean, the
Well,
scholars
that's
couldn't.
true. You're right.
And there was no, like, we'll go over to the bookstore or the magazine shop, and we'll pick up a copy of the Torah.
Right.
Most of them couldn't read.
They're
and
just
that's one of
preoccupied with their lives. Right?
Yeah,
They're
one of the
just-
And
reasons
they're in
they had
captivity,
that was the dictate of, what was it, Ross? Once every 7 years?
Look at the Maccabees.
Yeah,
They
in
will read.
Deuteronomy 31, 10, and 11, it says that's what they're supposed to do. It's what
Supposed
they're
to do.
supposed to do.
Read
So,
it.
but if they hadn't been communicating the Torah to the common people, what are they going to do? They're going to do whatever
They're
they
just going
want.
to do what their neighbors
Well,
are
over
doing.
and over, the
And our friend
prophets,
Wade talking about what happened to the oral tradition. What about that?
the thing is, you
there
read
wasn't
the
much of an oral
history.
law in those
Look at the
days.
period. Look at the period before Josiah. Look at his father. Look at his grandfather. If you read in the accounts that we have in Kings and Chronicles, it's off the chain. They're not following the teaching.
Right.
And so this would be, it's like somebody opens this up and they go, oh man.
Okay, so refocus. So this
see,
small scroll that they find and that they read, this piece of Deuteronomy, is there's enough in there in the first person,
Yeah.
Moses,
Yeah.
to just be, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, because to read all 5 books, like you said when we talked about this last night, Genesis 1:1 to the end of Deuteronomy, that's a long read. But
Yeah.
if you jump right into that part of Deuteronomy and you're reading Moses' words,
Yeah.
it didn't going to take very long for the king to rip his garment.
That's right.
Especially for the king, because
Yeah.
there's judgments in there and dictates on how you're supposed to operate. And the person that's doing the judgment's supposed to be the king.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
not only
in
that.
charge here.
Yeah,
only
and this
that-
is what Moses
Yeah,
said
this is
I'm
my
supposed
job.
to be doing.
Let me
Job
tell you.
description.
Let me tell
Yeah.
you what would. Let me tell you one of the things that Josiah would have heard. Get this, Deuteronomy 17. If it's Deuteronomy, Deuteronomy 17 is the only thing that even allows for a king. First of all,
Right.
the rest of the Torah isn't too favorable. But if you get to 17 and you go to verse 14, he would have heard this. When you are come into the land which Jehovah your God gives you, and you shall possess it and dwell it, and shall say, I'll set a king over me like all the nations that are about me. Then then you may appoint a king over you, whom Jehovah shall choose, one from among your brethren. You shall set as king over you. You may not set a stranger, but he shall not multiply horses to himself, nor cause a people to return to Egypt.
Right.
To the end that he shall multiply horses. Since Jehovah has said to you, you shall henceforth return no more that way. Neither shall he multiply women to himself, that his heart turn not away. Neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. And it will be, when he sits upon the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself a copy of this Torah in a book. And he's like, oh, I got to do this, right? Now,
That's what I'm saying. If you're the king and you hear this for the first time, it's like,
exactly. All right, so
one of our viewers comments that we weren't exiled for jaywalking. In other words,
yeah,
it
was more
was some
serious.
stuff. It's like, it wasn't just a minor little deal there.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Now,
good.
That's a good line.
Here, there are a lot of questions I'm missing, but here's one
Well,
from
the ancient Hebrew would be Y walking.
Right.
It wouldn't be J walking.
Yeah, that's right. Yo. All right, so Karina says, is there any mention of, quote-unquote, the Messiah in this new covenant? Does Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 8 and 9 allude to it? Also, can you explain Jeremiah 31:22? For Jehovah has created a new thing in the earth, a woman shall court a man. How does this fit into this prophecy? Working backwards then.
Right.
Jeremiah 31:22, no idea. I'm being honest. It is a puzzle. It is a very isolated saying. There are a lot of opinions on that, and I know there are probably people here who go, oh, I know what that means. It means this, this, and this. It's difficult. I don't know what that means.
What's the verse?
Jeremiah 31:22. And so that is a very, it's puzzled me. It's not something that I've given up on yet.
How long will you waver, O faithless daughter? For the Lord has created a new thing on the earth. A woman encircles a man. This is the ESV.
Yep.
What is yours?
Pretty close. No, that's
Encircles?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's tied to the root word savav, to go around. So some go, well, that in fact in Judaism, when they do a Jewish wedding, the woman goes around, because they go, well, here it is, and that's a beautiful way to represent what the text is saying. But is that what it means? I don't know if it's talking about Jewish weddings. I think that it's something there, though. It's something I just don't quite comprehend. Now, in chapter 30, the question is put forward by Karina, which is an excellent question. And I glossed over this pretty quickly just because of time. There is this saying, right? This is in the New Covenant scroll. But they shall serve Jehovah their God and David their king, whom I will raise up for them. Now, here's what most do with that text. They say, this is a son of David. This is a Mashiach, a Messiah, who will descend from David. And Jews and Christians, everybody who reads these texts, let's say the people of the book, they say, this is going to be, but why could it not be? Watch, Siri's going to say, I don't understand what you're asking me, Ross. But what they do is they say something that the text does not say. Okay, bear with me. What the text actually says is that in this restoration, is that out of this deliverance, a time of Jacob's trouble, they're going to be delivered, and they're going to seek or serve Jehovah their God and David their king. It doesn't say the son of David. Now, you look at most commentators, they go, oh, it's not. I think it actually means what it says. At least that's the way I like to start. So I think it's implying that what's going to happen is God is going to raise up David, and people are going to be saying, David, Melech Israel, hey, people clapping, because it'll really be David.
Arlene says, Jehovah says his name is David, and his name is David.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. So
kinda
it says David, and there are
what it
three
says.
places in the text where it says he'll raise up David. Now, all right, there are other texts which talk about a righteous ruler who is raised up, who is the seed of David, you might get the impression by reading. And there are plenty of texts. I've done a series on the Messiah, but it's probably about time to do that one again too. These messianic figures fascinate me. I've got files on this stuff. But I want to in the New Covenant scroll, it simply says David. I'll raise up David.
Topic change?
Yep, I'm ready.
So the other thing is,
Nothing hard.
I don't know how.
Just easy stuff.
It's
make it
softball.
hard.
Don't worry, it's softball.
All right.
So this is this comment I wrote down of my own writing at the end of your presentation. You were sort of doing your wrap up,
Okay.
and if this was if your initial presentation was set up like this, I would have. I got a question, and if
Right.
it was just you and me talking, you always let me interrupt and ask
Absolutely.
a question. But this is so at the highest altitude, and by that I mean just push the earth away at arm's length. It's like a basketball in your hands.
Yep.
Okay. Human history, the history of the human race, the purpose of this blue oceanic sphere flying through space. Okay, you're saying that ultimately Yehovah has a plan to create a planet and put human beings on that planet. And initially, they're in this Edenic state. And that because of circumstances, and I know there's a lot of debate about what happened or why, his eventual intent
Right.
in the Torah and the prophets is to create eventually a land and a people that successfully, a land and a people for all Israel. And the creation and preservation of that place is the central plan of history. In other words, Yehovah makes this planet, puts human beings on it. There's a lot of depravity
Yep.
and disobedience, or shall we say, just misalignment. People are refusing to align. And that in the eventual purpose of everything, after all the history, after all the presidents, after all the wars come and go, after all the years rush by, all the injustices, all the beautiful things, all the not beautiful things, after it all rushes by, he's going to dwell in this land with his holy people and all people of the earth that align with this
Amen.
central revelation focused on the physical land of Israel.
Right.
And that's what
That's it.
That's what history is about. And your new covenant, the good news of your new covenant is, hey, Babylonian exile time frame, I'm eventually going to bring you back
from their point of
and
view,
everybody back. Because no matter how hard we resist and flail,
Yeah.
he's going to make this work on the earth. And that's his purpose for the earth.
Israel is this model of excellence that is supposed to create.
His tavnit.
Yes, it's his pattern. That's a beautiful word, tavnit. And what he wants to do, it's like a blueprint. I'm going to take one people, I'm going to specially choose, I'm going to call them my segula. All people are mine. I get it. He says all people are mine. But Israel is my segula, my specially chosen. I'm going to put them in the center of the earth. They're going to set the example, and all nations will look and say, what a wonderful and wise people this is, who has a God so near to them that he answers when they call. I want to be like that. Zechariah 8:23. 10 men from all the languages of the nations will say, I want to grab hold of this because we've heard that God is with you. Nations will flow to Jerusalem where they will learn the Torah which will go forth from Zion and from Jerusalem. The goal is that people just be nice. That people would worship the one God, that they would learn finally what the
Love
prophets
their neighbors as themselves.
love their neighbors as themselves. I mean, how many times does it say throughout the prophets where Jehovah's speaking through them, where he says, I sent my prophets early, day in and day out, I sent them. And you know what their message was? It's justice, seek justice.
This reminds me of
Help
the
the
book
oppressed.
of Job. It's like, look at all these people he put on this earth. None of them are any good. Well, if you consider my prophet,
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, it's a good segue.
take away free choice, see what happens. That's
Yeah.
kind of
So-
the idea.
Take that
Segue.
hedge away.
Segue.
The Creator said, I don't think much of this concept of a king, but if you really decide you want one,
Yeah.
these are the rules that he's going to have to live by if you want one.
Yeah.
Okay?
Like if you want to be like the nations,
That's cool. So, anyway, and in there it also says
You want a temple?
that one day, well, do we need a temple? God said, I lived in a tent. Why do I need a temple? Anyway, all this transpires, and let's jump in the way forward machine, which is kind of like the way back
I
machine,
like that machine. Yeah.
and go to today, to the year 2019. Israel has been formed as a nation. People have been pulled out of nations all over the world to come back to Israel. And they don't have a king. They have a prime minister. They have a Knesset, a parliament. So
You're talking about the political.
I'm talking about this is how Israel is to. Well, there was a physical Israel back then that had a
I
king.
know.
Yeah.
But
So today's Israel, that has been pulled from all nations of the world, from east, west, north, south, they don't have a king. Is the king going to have to be there? God said he didn't really necessarily want a king. If you want one, well, today they're going like, maybe God had a point. They have a prime minister. It's elected. They have a prime.
Never said you shouldn't have a leader.
Well,
Never should have
the
a
idea
king.
was God was supposed to be the king.
Yeah, so if we were to do linear, if we were to put all these prophecies on a line and say, how does it look? And you start in your Garden of Eden state, right? God and man walking about in the cool of the day. You're about to be in a beautiful piece of God's nature.
Being nice.
Got a job.
Just everything's
I'm
working.
trying to, people are saying this is all great, but what about today?
Yeah.
Where are we today?
Well, that's where I'm going. So you start off and you have from that, and then ultimately, what do you have? If you look at the very end, the picture is what you just described. There's no war. Death tears will be no more. Everything.
Back.
So what does it look like then? Ultimately, I believe Jehovah is king, and there is no other. See, if you look at Deuteronomy 6:4, which is the model God gave Israel, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." Now, in the meantime, along that line, you have Micah. What does Micah say? All of the people walk in the name of their God, but we walk in the name of Jehovah our God. But then ultimately, Zechariah 14:9, and in that day, what day? Go to the end of the line, like the farthest. And it says, Jehovah will be king over all the earth. He will be one and his name one. So I call that the universal Shema. That's like everybody gets it then. It's not like you're going to have somebody going, well, my God is so-and-so, and my God's so-and-so. And you're like, it's okay. Micah chapter 5 says that's okay. No, it's everybody. So that's the goal. Now, in the meantime, you have a lot of stops, wrong turns, dead ends, that kind of thing. But I think ultimately, this new covenant, and you can only do so much in an hour. Here's some things that you think about. Ultimately, God's instructions will be written on the heart, right? Because Jeremiah makes a really big point, very important points this Jeremiah makes. He said, listen, Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 15, there's coming a time, I'm paraphrasing, when there won't be an Ark of the Covenant. It's not going to be remembered. You're not going to make it again. You won't miss it. You know why? Because it's not necessary. It's superfluous. It's as wonderful as the testimony is, which are the 10 words engraved by the finger of God on both sides.
What God's going to do is
even
even better.
It's going to be better.
Way much better.
So here's what made people nervous. I got some mail about this when I said, I'm talking about a better covenant with better promises, right? And people go, oh, wait a minute, you just quoted the book of Hebrews. But here's the point. It is. Look, I can go through the motions. I can be an externally religious person.
Sure.
All of us can. We can fake it. We can clean up well. But what we need is this internalization. That can be done to some degree of our efforts.
That was a problem back then even. That was a major problem. Jeremiah saw that.
Yeah.
It's not, you got a hard stone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we want, not only do we want to take what was written on stone tablets and put it on our heart. If your heart is stone, you did a match for match.
Right.
You go, I got it on my heart.
Yeah.
I'm going to help Daniel just because, I got to.
It's in the law.
Yeah, it's written.
It's the rules.
I got to do it. I got to follow the rules.
I don't have a choice.
But what if I got to the place that God describes where it was my deepest desire
That's what you want to do.
Heart
to
of flesh.
serve? It's got to be converted.
Not a heart of stone.
A conversion process. It doesn't cost money. Isaiah says, come, buy without money. Right? Imagine that concept. What if we really did believe this adage, buy the truth and sell it not? What if we really did the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing because it burns within us to do the right thing? This is what God wants. It's what He's always wanted. But in the meantime, there is a process whereby we kind of fake it till we make it. So here's what has to happen. And one more point. You can't do it without God's Spirit. You can't do it without God's Spirit. The prophets, this is Hebrew Bible stuff. This isn't like people, I'm not preaching from Acts 2 here. I'm talking Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Nahum, Micah, Habakkuk. It's the Spirit of the living God is going to come upon all flesh. That's the vision. So when these prophets are out and they're preaching and they're teaching, their whole point is, let's do what we can. Deuteronomy chapter 10 and Deuteronomy chapter 30. In Deuteronomy 10, you know what it says? Circumcise, therefore, the foreskin of your heart. I want you to do it. You, John, you, Pam, Dave, you, me, everybody.
You didn't say my name.
Well, I forgot your name just for a second.
Sorry.
But it's you got your name's not important.
You got to come twice in a week. You know?
Yeah, I was building up to that. Well, you circumcise your heart, but notice now Deuteronomy 30.
I know, man.
You know what Deuteronomy 30 is?
can look
Deuteronomy
it up.
30 is the new covenant. Go look at it. It says, in days to come, when you come to yourself, when you return to your heart, among the nations, you're scattered. This is what Jeremiah 30, this is the context. They're not even in the land of Israel yet. Excuse me. And God says, look, when all this happens to you, this is going to happen. Deuteronomy 30, the most incredible chapter in all the Bible. Mm-hmm. And he says this, he says, and I will circumcise your heart and the heart of your children. Mm-hmm. So that,
Hello
look,
there.
hello Siri. Go to sleep. I hadn't got this new phone adjusted right. She's always helping me. She's like, let me look that up for you. I don't need your help, thank you. But maybe I ought to let her talk. Maybe
so.
Maybe she could do a better job.
But I think the beautiful idea that we get is you are to create in yourself a new heart and a new spirit, right? Ezekiel 18. But it also says God will do it. So we should make every effort to do it, but we should be praying on our knees that Jehovah's Spirit would help us.
I don't think it'll take a lot of blathering
Right.
to ask him to do that.
That's right.
If
He's
you're
so ready, you think?
If you're absolutely, of course, he created. I mean, if you ask
Been
him,
waiting thousands of years. I know.
right.
Yeah, I think Jeremiah offers us. We mentioned this book last week. I always forget the author's last name, Schreiber, Mordecai. He writes a book, The Man Who Knew God. Jeremiah, the man who knew God.
Good title.
I'm telling you, when I read Jeremiah, I mean, it evokes emotion. It is the most powerful. When you read through it, Jeremiah says, look, read Jeremiah 15. I cannot teach that chapter. I'd be blubbering up here, I'm telling you. Because in Jeremiah 15, he basically says, you told me that you gave me this word and I ate it. And I've been alone. You know, he said, I don't go out with my friends. I don't have any friends. He said, this is my day. This is my life. And God tells him, okay, if you stand up, if you bring forth the precious from the profane, you take that which I tell you and you speak what I tell you, you're going to be a prophet for me. In other words, he didn't even address, look, I hear you crying about not having friends. I'll be your friend. You're going to do what I tell you to do. But it's the most powerful, and think about these concepts. If you were to, and look, I know there are people who are all over the spectrum on views of sacrifice and offering.
Sure.
This is not for any reason other than to make a point. If we think that we can take anything that we have, whether it be our firstborn or a lamb or thousands of rivers of oil, Micah, right? If we think that any of that, even with the right heart, is what will draw us nearer to God, we're mistaken. Because here's a truism for us. Jehovah needs nothing from us except a willingness to do what it is he said we should do. That's it.
Agreed.
He said, do justice, love loving kindness or true loyalty, and walk humbly or circumspectly with your God. I mean, if we could do that, you go, well, that's not enough. I want to keep the 613. Yeah, good luck, right? I mean,
You can't keep the 613.
right.
You
I
have
understand.
to have a temple functioning.
And who even knows if that number is right? Have you ever counted?
Right.
You know, that's another debate. But traditionally, there's 613 commandments, 360 negative, 365 negative, and the balance is positive.
Somebody counted somewhere.
If somebody did, you know. So
Did you
maybe
check?
they're
You might have
right.
double checked them for 'em.
My point is that if you walk through and you go, yep, I did that, I didn't eat pork today, I didn't, you know. it's necessary. Don't forsake those, but don't miss the bigger picture. The weightier matters of the Torah.
You started out basically saying that a larger work is the term you use. A larger work.
Yeah.
Not that doesn't make the other work smaller.
Yeah.
Or, you know.
Dawn nails it. Dawn just wrote a contrite heart.
Yeah.
You know, that's Isaiah 66.
My sacrifice is a contrite spirit.
Yeah.
My humble heart you will not spur.
Yeah. It's this idea that the ones who tremble at my word. I mean, that is a powerful image. I was walking in Israel.
Well, think about Eden.
Yeah.
Okay, before there's a problem.
Yeah.
There's no temple, there's no Judaism, there's no law, there's no Torah, there's no prophets.
Had a simple job, cultivate the earth.
Yep.
Well, yeah.
Man.
You didn't have to, and you didn't have to go shopping for clothes
Yep.
because you were maybe walking around in the Shekhinah. Who knows? But I'm just saying, in that context, that's the simplicity you're talking about.
Yeah.
All this other stuff, this extraneous stuff, which God gave to them, okay? I have a problem with the idea, and I'm not saying that you're saying this, or any of you are saying this.
I probably am. I
No,
think.
you're not. No, you're smart enough.
You drove far enough to say it. Go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead.
That the temple and the commandments in the Torah about the Mishkan, essentially, because they weren't really commandments for the temple. It was the Mishkan, were God's design, God's plan.
Okay.
I heard a friend preach recently about how the temple was an example of Sinai, and that the whole Tavnit was Sinai. And when I heard him say that, I thought to myself, actually no, it's more. It's earlier than that. It's actually a picture of Eden.
Okay.
And so the commandments that are around that, the problem that I have is where there are people who will imply, and this may primarily be Christians in a replacement theology perspective. They'll say that the temple is just a bunch of Jewish rituals, as if Moses received that Tavnit on
Right.
Sinai, the design, the layout, the elements, the orientation, its complete function. It's not all about you've been bad, come and slay a few goats and everything will be okay.
Right.
That's not what the temple is for.
Yeah.
That's a piece of it. It's a very small piece of it. The rest of it is about interaction with and
Drawing near.
fellowship with
Yeah.
the Lord. It's a place for a familiar interaction. That's what it's for. It's not just all about
People miss that. And
I
that's a
know.
good point. They miss what we call zones of holiness. You know, it's like the temple.
It's like any relationship, though.
Yeah,
you know?
how it's a method whereby we can understand in our little finite minds, how do I, regular guy, approach the awesomeness of God? How is it that I can come into the presence of one who could blink and I would disappear? I mean, and there are rules associated there.
Correct.
Because what does he say? Exodus 25:8-9. Make for me a mikdash, which means a holy place, and I will come and dwell in your midst.
Right.
This is a whole goal. What is that? That's your point, Daniel. It's back to Eden. How do we get back to Eden? Man was kicked forth from Eden because sin was there.
And cherubim guard with
That's
flaming
right.
swords guard.
Because God
the
said, you
access.
can't bring that in my house.
Right.
How many of us would tell our kids or anyone, look, you can do whatever you want, but you ain't bringing that in my house.
Not under my roof. Not under my roof.
Yeah.
I never heard that.
So, and we've said it, but there are rules associated with an approach to the living God. What we have, what I was going to say, I was walking on one of my tours, and we went into the northern Golan, and we were in a blasted out bunker, and we were talking historically. You've probably been there.
Bentel?
Yep, actually, and some of these old
Yeah.
Syrian bunkers and all. We're walking through, and I remember it's like I was just there. The wind is blowing through this tunnel, this hallway in this building, and in this, there's graffiti all over the walls. And we get to this opening, this large room where everyone could come around and talk. And the guide was telling a story about a battle that took place. And on the wall, in Hebrew, stenciled not written, stenciled, was the most beautiful passage. And this is what it said. And I thought, how fitting is this? It says this. It's better to read it. Thus says Jehovah, the heaven is my throne, the earth is my footstool. Where is the house that you would build for me? Where is the place of my rest? This is in a battle zone. Somebody stencils this. For all these things has my hand made, so all these things came to be, says Jehovah. But to this man will I look, to him that is poor and of a contrite spirit and trembles at my word. Think about that. Of all the noise and everything that's going on around us, the disarray, the confusion, the bickering, the fighting, the hatefulness, what is God looking for? He's just looking for a humble and contrite person who trembles at his word. Like, how can I disagree with a lot of people, but I don't make it a point to fight with everybody that disagrees with me.
Right.
Good God, I don't have time, nor the energy, nor the patience, nor the desire. Our desire has to be, it's like a golf game. How do I improve my game? How do I, and maybe, learn in my life how to share those examples and learn from other people. I mean, that's what it boils down to.
You've heard of the concept, it's probably a Christian concept, the audience of one.
Yeah.
Which is the notion of doing exactly what you're saying. Look, all you can change is you.
Yeah.
All you can be is the best that you can be in obedience with God, and
That's
He
right.
is watching you and can see you with His single eye. He's just
Yep.
leaning in. Yep. And if nobody else sees the kindness, the goodness, the forgiveness, all of the attributes of justice that you're talking about,
Yeah.
if you're living them out and He can see that,
David gets
that's
it.
enough.
King David, in his Psalm 51. Beautiful, beautiful passage.
I'm just thinking, make your heart a holy place,
Yeah.
and I, Jehovah, will dwell there.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. You work on you and get you right to be receiving of that. I think that's the beautiful picture. Whenever we think about that, that's what it's all about. In Psalm 51, David said, look, I know my sins. People around him may not know, but he knew them. They're more than the number of the hairs of my head. But you can approach God. This is the beauty of the biblical message. We can individually approach the living God with a repentant, with a contrite heart, and come into His presence in that sense. But we have to make ourselves, this holy place. That's the goal. It's the beautiful image that we have. The new covenant, the thing that's so powerful about it, Daniel and I were talking about late last night and early this morning, about this idea of the new covenant and what that entails. It really is. It's so powerful. There's this idea that some people say, well, it's not really a new covenant, it's a renewed covenant. And I said, I like what people are doing. I understand what they're doing. In other words, they're saying, no, the covenant that God has with His people has always been consistent. It's always been the same. But what the new covenant is, and the word means new. I mean, it just means new. I don't care if you say renewed, new, doesn't matter. But the idea is that it is very much, the covenant is the covenant. Look here's a passage we ought to all think about. Isaiah 59. Isaiah 59:21 says, as for me, this is my covenant with them, saith Jehovah.
It's on
My
the inside of my wedding ring.
spirit.
It's on my
Is
wedding
it
ring.
really?
It's on the inside of my wedding ring.
Let me see.
Isaiah 59:21? It's in my wedding
This
ring.
is like a magic trick.
For 33 years. For 33 years.
You saw it first here. I knew that was on your ring. I saw it. No,
Really?
I didn't see it. But that's beautiful.
The
That's
great
a beautiful
Karnak.
verse.
Yeah,
Damn, broke it too.
Isn't it nice?
Sure.
Look,
This is
my
my covenant.
I
spirit,
can't. I don't have my glasses on.
my spirit that is upon you, and my words that I have put in your mouth, shall not depart out of your mouth, nor out of the mouth of your seed, nor out of the mouth of your seed's seed, says Jehovah.
How long?
From henceforth and forever.
Hallelujah.
That is beautiful. So people can say, oh, the covenant is this, the covenant is that. Jehovah says, here's my covenant. My words that I put in my spirit. You can't have just the words. You like people go, well, I know the Bible. I can beat anybody at Bible trivia, right? It's not enough. If you have words and no spirit, you're not where you need to be. Get this. If you're like this most spiritual person and you just like live in another, you're so heavenly good, you're no earth, you're so heavenly minded,
no earthly good. Yeah.
And you're just all about the spirit, I just love the Lord, but you don't have the words, no, they go together. Words, spirit, equals life. And this is the key. This is the key to the new covenant. How is it that the eternal message of the eternal God is written on tables of flesh? Like Dave mentioned a minute ago, your heart, right? It's got to be written on your heart, but there's a heart of stone that has to be converted. So we all start off with this rock-hard heart. The goal is we start working on our heart. How do you work on your heart? You're obedient. And you do certain things.
Or you're not.
Or you're not, and God works on your heart. And
even still, you can say no.
Yep.
And
Still have free will.
that's
That's
right.
Freedom of choice.
It's a choice. And my prayer is that we choose life. I love the way Moses puts it. Choose you this day. I put before you life and blessing, death and cursing. Choose life, that it might go well with you and with your children after you. The image is, in many ways, people say, oh, it's beyond I can't attain that. Yes, we can. That's the beauty. Look, though the righteous stumble 7 times, this is what's so incredible about, you can call it religion, but call it whatever you will, this walk, this faith. We're going to make mistakes.
Sure.
Every one of us. Some more than others. Some learn the hard way. But ultimately, the goal is to work on you. I work on me, you work on you. I love...
So when you look at a general spread of years, let's just use a number. Let's just say 80 years. Mm-hmm. An 80-year life. Now, some people, of course, there's all the there are babies who die, people who live to be 125. I'm just saying, an 80-year life, standard life, going through the major steps of that life. What is life for? If the vision, as we talked about a short time ago, is the whole globe, focus on Israel, all nations aligning, no more war, justice, the light is shining, he's present, he's living with us, we're his people, he's our God. That's a goal. That's not happening right now.
Right.
So what you have is this filing cabinet of human history.
I have 2
files
filing.
after files. No, I'm not talking about your files.
Okay.
It's a bigger file cabinet.
Bigger.
There is actually a larger file
I
cabinet
got
than
you.
yours.
I'm with
We only got 2.
What's the point
Have anything.
of
Yeah.
those 80 years? What's the point of those 60 years? His 14, his 109 years. Why has God created us and given us a free will and allowed us to stumble through time and maybe never even hear the things you're talking about?
Yeah.
There are people right down the street from where we're sitting
Sure.
who have no idea what you're talking
Yeah.
about, and they're not going to. They're going to die in this town and get buried in your cemetery and have never even heard the wisdom that we're talking about in this room.
Yeah.
Why does the Almighty have a planet with people on it who don't get it, won't get it, don't want to get it if they start hearing about it, either from a Christian perspective or from a Hebrew Bible exclusive perspective?
Yeah.
Well,
What's the point?
Even back in Genesis, he had a 50-50 shot with Cain and Abel. He got
Yeah. Yeah, one
half,
got it.
half the
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So-called
true.
two-
But I mean,
two
but do you
Yeah.
I mean, maybe do you understand
Yeah.
my
Yeah, yeah,
question?
yeah. Get it.
What's the point?
Yeah.
I'll go back to that. I don't want to say don't worry, be happy. Or
Well, you
our
still haven't
point of being
answered
on
my
this
question.
earth
My
being
question
happy.
is, why
Well,
is this
you
process
happening?
happening?
You gotta listen. So it's a part of goodwill. I mean, of free choice. We're here. we don't know why we're here.
Well, that's what I'm
I don't know if
asking
you're
you.
asking that.
That's what I'm asking.
You're asking exactly why we are here.
Why is he permitting this process to operate and run
Unfold in history.
over time?
So I've heard people try to say, you know, it's a great experiment. You know, maybe the gods were looking down and
Well, I don't
our
believe
God said, well, let me do this. Let me try this out. You know, but you can't. Our little human brain can't.
But
see
if
that.
there is a plan,
Well, what do you think?
if there is a plan and purpose,
Yeah, okay.
and it is as you've described that God selects, it's like a pattern, a model of excellence. In corporations, they do this. They go, okay, look, we've got 17 machines in this organization.
shoes,
We're going
yeah.
to take one of these and we're going to make it the best of the best. We're going to clean it. We're going to put the best people on it to operate it. We're going to have the best of our mechanics to work on it. And we're going to see, industry does this, we're going to see if we can create a model of excellence whereby then we look at the other 16 and we go, now we're going to start working procedurally and process and mechanically to get it up to this one. That's the goal. We're going to. What God does with Israel, he takes a special group and he says, I'm going to put you, because ultimately what does God want? What he had in Eden. God and man dwelling together in a perfect Edenic state. Everything is perfect until sin is found, right? So it's the eradication of sin and the thriving of justice and righteousness in God's ways on the earth. And I think that ultimately that's what we're going to have. The righteousness will be there and the others won't.
But the main question is why did God even put Adam and Eve on this earth? What was the point? I think it's kind of what you're
And
getting
what's
at.
the point of?
And I know there's no answer to this. There's no way
Right,
we.
but what's the point of the
mean,
person who
John
lives
might be able
who
to.
lives in China in the 11th century BC that we don't even know his name, who lives in a little hovel with his wife
Yeah.
and has some kids and never heard anything about the
Yeah.
Hebrew Bible. Born, lives 37 years and dies
Right.
during a heavy snowstorm.
Yeah.
Who is that? Because that person's as real and
As I
his
am, yeah.
aspirations for living and caring and being who he was, okay,
Yeah.
times millions of lives that are just
Billions.
quietly in the silence of history that we don't know. You know, why does God permit all? What's this? What's all that for?
I'm going to really get philosophy. What about all the flowers out there? What were they created for? What about the birds?
For your enjoyment.
Sparrows. You know, just.
Well, I
in
have an
general,
answer
what's
for that.
all
I mean, I think obviously for their own enjoyment, their own experience is one piece of it, but also a part of it. All of the beauty that's in the
Sure.
order of creation is designed for us as being created in the image of our Creator to look at and reflect upon it and sense
You guys are
well-being
deep.
and
You guys are deep.
you know.
What about all them guys? You know, 200, 300, 400 years ago didn't have microscopes and couldn't see stuff we can see now.
You know what's,
this is crazy.
You know what's
They
powerful?
still saw what they saw without the internet to
Right,
distract them.
right.
I went to
They wrote some beautiful
That's for the
music.
internet.
Yeah.
I went to the Museum of the Bible with the Tylers in
Oh.
D.C.
Hadn't been there.
And it was interesting. And one of the things that was really like made you think was this room that you walk into, and it shows, it demonstrates in a very powerful way the languages in which a part or all of the Bible has been translated, and the languages that have never heard. Never, I mean, like, this ought to compel us to go into the world and, you know, like with a real mission. I love the fact that United Israel has this desire since its founding to share the message with the globe, you know, and it really does come down to what is that message? What is it that God ultimately wants from us? And I think surprisingly, it's somewhat simple and straightforward, but we have to pay attention. What you looking at?
And it says, I don't drink, but this topic requires a glass of wine.
Amen. Anita?
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Merlot, please.
Yeah. So we are. I tell you what, we've gone deeper and farther than
you were talking
we're
about
probably
it.
capable of.
We're talking futuristic here. This is like you say.
You're gonna need another filing cabinet,
a larger work.
We only got
Futuristic.
two. They're right there.
So I think I do truly think that when we read these words and we seek to understand, it really does come down to a simple message. But these are heavenly points, and the idea, the goal is to plant heaven here. You know, Isaiah 51 verse 16. The one who, in English, I think it says stretched out the heavens, but in Hebrew, literally, it's natah, that planted. So the goal really is like to be like a sower who goes forth to sow the seed. And you're literally planting elements of heaven here on earth. How do you do that? Well, think about it. Deuteronomy 15 is a perfect example. Deuteronomy 15 says you're going to always have the poor with you. But you know what it also says? There'll be no poor among you. Now, how can both be right? Well, if you have both and you see this as a great dilemma, it's really an ethical point that we should understand. You're always going to have poor, but you shouldn't have poor among you because you'll open your hand and help the poor. It's a challenge to us. Faith is a challenge. Our walk is a challenge. How can we take things that are heavenly and bring them to the earth in which we live, to the people around us? Look, you know, I have found, and many of you could probably say the same, people really don't, and I've used this phrase, I don't know who said it first, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you can walk in and go, look, let me tell you what Daniel chapter 9 says, and people are like, you know, I really don't care about that, but my child is in the hospital. You know, what are we doing?
Sure.
And that becomes, you can be a better witness to people through your actions, through your kindness. I'll give you an example. Someone posted the other day, in our community we've had some losses this year. And in the last couple of years, we've had people who lost their firstborn son. We've had people who lost their lifelong lover, their friend, and what do we do when we see that? There's a woman who just lost her firstborn son. I don't even know her. I mean, we don't even. I've never met this person, but we're going to try to reach out to them. How do we help people like that? There's more need than we have the capability. It's not. I'm not saying it's about money. Money is the least on the tiered approach. You know, look, church groups have this down, and synagogue groups. You know, I think people generally care. You know, how many times when I was growing up, if someone was sick, the community would come in and bring food and let me just clean your house for you, Daniel. Let me just help out. We have to think about things like that. John is an example. This earlier, a couple of weeks ago, he saw a situation. He said, man, we could do a little food bank here. Look, we're a little bitty group. You see us. This is it. But you out there, what are you doing? And you can find ways to help too. Help your family, help your neighbors, that's what it's about. It's
Thy
about
kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's also those opportunities. I won't tell you the details, but yesterday I encountered a person, and I gave them a small sum of money.
Yeah.
And I know it made her day.
Yeah.
And it made my day.
Yeah.
Just by being generous. And it isn't my generous. Oh, yeah. Pat me quickly on the back. No, it's not about that. It's like you're just a channel, and when you do that, kindness, and we've all done it. We've all done. You hear that voice in your heart saying, "Do this, go here, say this," and if you say it and do it and do what it's incredible. If you don't, you feel like a heel.
Yeah,
that's fine. You get another opportunity.
On the other hand, there's also that little voice in there, and I've done that myself. It said, were you just snookered? Is that going to be a drug thing?
Or, of course, yeah. But
then the thing you got to do is say, look, I did it for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, doesn't matter.
That's their evaluation.
Yes, that's between them and
the
their
Creator
Almighty.
is going to be looking at them.
Once you give somebody a gift, it's theirs
right.
to do whatever they
That's
feel,
true.
you know.
That's true.
Yeah. I had to learn that about employers. When you pay an employee, you know, and then you get mad because they're broke on Monday morning and they went out drinking and honking.
Yeah.
That's
their
choice. That's their choice. You know, you might empathy would say, well, let's try to learn about that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Right.
But still, it's not your place to decide.
So I'm gonna
what they do.
provide a quote that's not in the Bible.
Okay.
Oh,
And that is, there was a guy that was a big time performer in many decades gone past, who said you can't cheat an honest man. And the same holds true is
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I heard you.
P.T. Barnum.
Yeah.
You can't cheat an honest man.
That's heaping coals.
So if
There
you're-
is in the Bible, it's heaping coals. On,
Well, if
thing.
you're honest, you know, you can't really. I mean, you can be done wrong, but you can't go wrong.
I have, many of you know, in fact, Ronnie may be with us today online. I don't know, I don't know if he's listening, but Ronnie Fulcher wrote me and he said that, hey, look, in the near future, I'd like to give a presentation on this willingness to give. And look, this is about every type of giving, help and encouragement and
Time.
Whatever. But I think it'd be great. I've known Ronnie for 25 years, and I think that that's important. We ought to do that. So I'm going to be talking with Ronnie and see if I can't get him to come in and give that in the next few weeks, hopefully. So, but look, it has been a beautiful day with you. It's 1:30 our time, and I want to make sure that everyone has plenty of time to spend with their family and their loved ones. And if you are somewhat alone and would like to spend more time, you can go back and watch other teachings. And we love you. We appreciate you. We thank you for joining us. And join us every Sabbath at 10:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, and we'll do our best to present something from God's Word. And I trust hope that this was beneficial to you. If it was, just share it. Share it with other people who also might be benefiting from it. So, thank you, Daniel, for coming.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave,
Thanks,
for
Daniel.
always being here and getting this
Technical.
message out, and for Pam bringing
You should see all the gear he's
brightness
got
of
going
her
on over here.
smile and
And
Don't need
John,
any of it, though.
thank you, guys. So thanks, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Shavua Tov. Have a beautiful week.